Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Monty's away on holiday, so you've got me today. I'm just trying to help these cardoons a little bit with a job that I probably should have done a month or so ago. Just giving them support, because I want to keep these through the winter months. I do think these heads look absolutely fantastic as the plant browns and the frosts arrive. So all I'm using is a steel pin. Anything that's going to be strong enough just to support this stem. Hopefully that will help carry these right through the winter months. And I get to enjoy one of those frosty mornings. Coming up on today's programme, we meet a naval captain who's made it his mission to design a garden that could take care of itself when he's away for months at sea. Rachel's rejuvenating a collection of pots to extend their season into late summer. And I will be tackling one beast of a viburnum. It's getting to that time of year where you can get back in your borders and start to make the adjustments for next year, and I feel like I've been in and out of these herbaceous beds ever since I've planted them. But they're slowly getting there, and I think that's it with gardening. It's just every year, can you edit, can you change what's worked, what hasn't worked? And now I'm looking at it, I'm really happy with the Catanus at the back there, the Baptisia, those two foliages work really well together. And then as we come through, the roses, the Munstead wood, and the Gertrudica have flowered and flowered and flowered. But there's just a gap there, you know, and I think I just need to add a bit of colour that's gonna, this time of year, really bring the whole thing alive. To help add a bit of height to the back of the border, I'm going to use two tall herbaceous perennials, Eupatorium maculatum, with its purplish pink flowers, and a dazzling orange-yellow Rudbeckia. So the first thing I want to do is get these Eupatorium in place. I don't think that's too bad. Just come out there. I can see straight away the grasses will be higher next year. That Eupatorium will get up to 2 metres plus, depending on your soil, and those lovely flat heads will work well against that strong vertical of the grass. So we can get them in. Buying herbaceous plants this time of year makes an awful lot of sense, because so many of them have got really strong root systems on them. You know, they've had the full season of growth. And if you're lucky, you might even pick up a deal. This is a fantastic back of the border plant, not just for that late colour, but for the bees and the butterflies. I'm really teasing these roots. I'm not being that gentle, and that will stimulate that new growth and help get them going. I personally think that September is one of the best months of the year to plant, because you've got that warmth in the soil from the summer, but also you've got the moisture starting to arrive in the sort of, you know, the dews in the mornings and then the evening. Make that a bit bigger. Generally, when I'm planting plants, what I'm looking to do is make the hole twice as wide as the plant. So if you imagine, you know, that is my plant, I'm going to make that again either side. Just making sure that there's no air gaps in around those roots. And I'm firming it, but again, I'm not jumping on it. And I love the colours straight away as well. Eupatorium, Catanus. There's a lovely little tone that just works between them. And not just the flower, if you look carefully, that dark stem picks up as well. Anyway, I better stop waffling and keep planting. final firm. There you go. You're seeing this before me. What do you think? It's Rebecca Prairie Glow, and it really does glow. Lovely little sort of orangey yellow tips, which I think pick up beautifully with the golden rod, and then that crocosmia at the front there. I mean, they're a plant that's not that long-lived, but apparently they can seed a little bit as well. I think it's going to work. Let's just get out here and have a final look. Straight away now you can see that orange against the pear, but actually as the season goes on, that will give autumn colour and that will just bring the whole thing alive again. And what's lovely about things like the Eupatorium and the Rebecca is they'll keep those seed heads and they'll look great right through the winter. It's interesting, isn't it, when it comes to planting gardens and even creating them. I've put that in there and straight away it's put a smile on my face. But as well as that, we should create spaces that work for our lives. And we're now off to meet a man that has done just that.
I'm Carl Woodfield. I live in a little village in Hampshire called Lockerley. The garden's really special to me because I spend 8 months of my life a year in a steel box. And I always buy a few plants for my cabin on board because I don't like to be the only thing growing in it. I'm a captain in the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. We operate worldwide in support of the Royal Navy. I am the only gardener in the family. My wife is bringing up 3 children. I can't ask her to take on my garden as well. So there's some fairly intensive gardening that goes on when I'm at home. But the garden fends for itself when I'm away. I've been gardening this space for about 22 years now. When we moved in, it was just concrete. I started gardening in pots, etc., but found it quite difficult because I'm away from the home for 4 months at a time. I lost a lot of plants, and I realised that I needed borders so that the plants could survive without me. It is a small space. It's about 36 square metres, and the challenge really is to make it feel bigger. And to do that, I've brought in some fairly big plants that I've grown on. So I've planted some trees in here and some large shrubs, and that helps it feel bigger, even though it's a small space. I tend to shy away from annuals and things which are too fussy and need too much maintenance. So in the garden here, I've actually grown all of my box from one plant. So all of the box you can see are cuttings and provide continuity through the garden. So there's really good winter structure in here as well. I tend to sow seeds every year when I'm at home, if I'm home at the right time. I have a greenhouse which I inherited. It's my granddad's greenhouse. It's a bit decrepit, but it's hidden up behind the garage. And it's my hidden paradise up there. Somewhere to go and escape from 3 daughters. I have quite a few hostas in the garden because they're great form and they fit in really well with the design. I obviously, suffer with slugs and snails like everybody else, but I'm lucky at the moment as I have a hedgehog which hoovers up an awful lot of slugs and snails. I've got splashes of colour in the garden throughout the year, and one of them that's out at the moment is the hydrangea Annabelle. She's got some fantastic white blooms and just adds a little bit of interest and colour, but not too much. Inspiration-wise, I decided to create some focal points, and I've used the stained glass. I borrowed that idea from a show garden at Chelsea. So from the dining room, you can see right the way through to the lit stained glass. And also as you come into the garden through the gate, I've raised the crown on the choice here and created the seating area, so you have that focal point as well. My job is very challenging, but coming home and having this space as a green, verdant space is fantastic for me and my mental well-being. My kids say if they can't find me, they know exactly where I am. I'm out in the garden.
I found that absolutely fascinating. The fact that Carl spends so long at sea, but still takes plants with him. And then when he gets back, that connection with his garden is incredibly important to him. And maybe we all need somewhere just to spend a few minutes and escape. And this is mine. The orchard area, which is also the wildflower meadow that we planted last year. And in general, I'm happy with it. It's interesting the way that the sunnier end, the flowers have done really well. Even the achillea now and the daisies are still doing their thing. But the more you get into the shade, the grasses are good, but the flowers not doing so well. But it's just a lovely place to come and spend a few minutes, isn't it? Eh? When we first moved into the property, we inherited a lot of big, slightly overgrown shrubs. And what I would say to anyone, first of all, is take your time. Don't just go in and slash and burn. And I didn't want to rush at this space because it's that main view from the house, boom. And at the moment, it just looks really heavy and quite dark and very blocky. And today, I'm going to give this viburnum tinus a prune. What I want to do is I want to lift the canopy. It allows me to start planting right the way underneath. Obviously, you're going to do anything like this, there's always a little bit of a gamble. You don't know quite what shape you're going to get out of the plant. But I've done one already. Just at the back of the house, we had a huge viburnum that started to die back from the bottom. So what I did is just started to lift the canopy on it, and it's worked really well. The stems look interesting. And it's lovely because from its base, what's happened is the growths have started shooting from the roots. So I've got these little patches that I'm going to clip into shapes. First thing I'm going to do is just get stuck in. I'm going to start low and lift my way up, but I'm not worried too much to start with because as I get further into the plant, I can start to understand where I make those final cuts. In a book, it would tell me to prune this early to mid-spring, but it'll be absolutely fine now. It's in a sheltered position, and I know it's a tough plant. I think what I love about shrubs like this, especially the winter flowering ones, is I'm quite happy that they disappear into the background through the summer, and then in the winter they become a structure. As soon as you clear a bit of room in there, you can see there's so much dead timber in there. I think that's the first thing to remember when you're pruning, is the 3 Ds. First thing I was taught at college, dead, diseased and damaged. That can be removed sort of any time of the year. A couple of bits in here, I've got a lot of dead timber. Way you can work it out, if you listen, it's a very different sound to the live timber. But also, if you're worried, just scrape very carefully. And if it's live underneath there, will be a bit of green. Fun, isn't it? Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm trying to achieve. You've got that depth back in there and I can start to add those layers of planting. Ultimately, the soil needs a little bit of improvement. So I'm going to put some organic matter in, maybe add some spring bulbs. But quite pleased with that. One of the things that I really love about gardening is the constant change. Things ebb and flow, and there's always a job to do. And on that note, you might remember early on in the year, Rachel planted an array of pots back against the wall to give real good summer interest. She's gone back to the same group just to look maybe how she can edit and just add a little life to carry her through to the back end of the season.
It's been more than 2 months since I planted up the bulk of these. And I can't tell you how much joy it's given me. But I think what it needs now is reassessment, replenishing, refreshing. And I'm going to start by taking out the things that are just no longer earning their keep here. The lily, which was here before, it was just a little tiny baby stem. I can go into a nice quiet corner of the garden and hide away until next year. Now this is a form of Digitalis purpurea. So they, to me, look rather scrappy now. The foliage is a bit shredded, not a great colour. Flowering's finished pretty much. There's some nice new growth just at the very base, so it might be worth digging them up, putting them somewhere else for a while.
Most of these plants can have another life out in the garden, or will flourish again next year in pots. To keep this season's display fresh for as long as possible, keep on top of the watering, the feeding, and deadhead regularly to encourage new flowers.
Now, sometimes there's a decision to be made about whether or not you do deadhead. And I think with the geum, I was deadheading it earlier on, but actually, I love the fact that it's still producing the odd flower here and there, which is still very pretty. But I rather like these seed heads. They're kind of like little orangey stars, and they just dot through this bronze fennel. And I think it's a very pretty effect. So I'm going to leave that, at least for now. However, here, the mint has gone a bit mad. It's also sort of starting to flower just on the tips here. Now, I could cut that really hard back right to the base and get a new flush of leaves, but actually, I like the height. It looks scruffy at the base, so I'm going to tuck it somewhere in amongst the other pots and just have that little bit of variegated foliage showing through. Now, I noticed that this pot has a very nice diasis, still looks good, but at the back is a really scrappy looking nasturtium, and it was great, but I think now is the time to lose it from this pot. On the compost heap that will go. Right. I'm going to replace it with this beautiful Crocosmia Carmine Brilliant. And I like two things particularly about it. One is that it's going to be that same shot of really fiery bright colour that you get with the nasturtium. The other good thing about this variety is it's compact. This stays at about 1/2 metre, 60 centimetres in height. So as you can see, it's perfect scale for this size of pot. So that's nice. So I haven't had to get rid of everything in here, just refreshing it. There's something equally lovely. And then this could always go out into the garden next year. Oh, snail. Aha, that's going. That's from the nasturtiums, you see. Now, what I've really loved about this planting is the height here from these Verbena bonariensis. Beautiful, and that little spangling of mauve flowers on the top. But I feel they're so tall, they're kind of detached from the rest of the planting, and I wanted to find something in similar colour. And then I spotted this beautiful verbena with a rather branching habit, and the flowers go all the way through it. It's called Bampton. It's more compact, but again, it's that lovely colour and a really nice dark intensity to the stems. So I'm going to just put that here as my sort of main plant. And then next to it, just lower down, because I think this is beautiful. Here, not so good. It gets a little bit scrappy at the base. So I found a lovely sedum. It's called Touchdown Teak. Again, these fleshy leaves means that they're absolutely adapted for low water conditions. So that goes in there. Dare I even try a little tiny bit of fennel? Yes, I dare. There we go. And I like that little bit of bronze fennel because that will just sort of weave a lovely mist around the whole thing, make it soft and beautiful. Right, well, I'm going to try the mint there for a day or two, and then I think I might be chopping it back after all, but we'll see. And that's freed up a little space for this verbena and sedum near the door. I really like that. I love how it's drawn the colour down to here. I'll probably come out tomorrow morning and move it all around again. And that's really the joy of gardening with containers. And I'm expecting to have weeks of glorious colour still from this lot. And then we'll do it all over again with winter pots, won't we? Yes, we will. Come on then. Dinner time.
I think Rachel's got an incredible eye for detail. Those pots looked fantastic, but they proved something. You don't necessarily need a lot of space to more or less create a herbaceous border. Could be a balcony or a small courtyard. I use pots in lots of different ways in the garden, maybe sometimes to pull you through a space or just here to pause you before you move into the rest of the garden. And I've used all the succulents, and this Aeonium pomegranate at the moment is just stopping me in my tracks, and I just enjoy, I suppose, the shape of it. It's quite sculptural, and just the way the water sits on it. It's even quite nice just having a few minutes to come out and tidy them up. I think it's lovely this time of year just to try and get a little bit more out of your veg garden. I'm already thinking about raw beans going in a few weeks' time, same as the peas, and some years we manage to get a lovely early crop out of them, some years we don't. But what I'm going to do today is sow some pak choi, which is great in stir fries, and it really does taste lovely. We've still got probably, I hope, 6 to 8 weeks before the weather turns. We can get a half reasonable crop out of it, and even if it doesn't reach full maturity, we'll still be able to use the plant in the kitchen. And it's a really easy one to sow. So what I'm going to do is create a little drill about 1 centimetre deep. This plant doesn't necessarily have to be grown in the garden. You could try some in a pot. And then just a matter of sowing the seeds. I will sow these quite heavily this time of year, but the moment they start to come up, I'll just pop out here and thin them out. Work that all the way through. And now all I'm doing is just really gently covering back over. just water that in. And I will keep an eye on that over the next few weeks because September can be a little bit dry. And the last thing is to fleece it over. Slugs love the young seedlings, so if I can keep this quite well covered, then the moment that the seedlings start to come up, they'll be protected. Pin those quite tightly, more or less in a way, just try and bury that in. The moment those seedlings start to come up, I then use these little wire frames and then cover it that way. And that gives them just that extra bit of protection. So hopefully, in a few weeks' time, we'll be enjoying pak choy in a wonderful stir fry. That's one job done. Here's a few more for your weekend if you fancy it. Autumn is a really good time to move herbaceous perennials. So if you have any plants that have outgrown their space, now's the time to dig them up and divide them. I tend to use 2 forks back to back, but you could also use a spade. This may look brutal, but the plants will come to no harm. Replant each piece, keeping them well watered until they get established. This is your last call to give your evergreen hedges like privet, lelandii and yew their final haircut of the season. If you do it now, they'll stay looking nice and crisp all winter long. You could use shears, but I like to use a hedge trimmer. It's a good idea to lift main crop potatoes before the bad weather arrives. But before you do this, it's worth removing all the dying top growth to give the skins time to harden under the ground. This will help to prolong their storage when you come to dig them up in a fortnight's time. Mrs. Foster's gone and bought me an early birthday present. I said I wanted a new lawnmower. She's bought me 3 of them. So meet Ron, Rita and Reg. The kids named them. They're islands and I'm going to use them in the garden in around that orchard area, but they're incredibly friendly. Anyway, that's it from us. I hope you've enjoyed it because I've had a fantastic time. I've got some great news for you. Next week, Friday night at 8 o'clock, Gardener's World is back to an hour. And Monty will be back at Longmeadow. So, bye-bye. Hey? What you doing? What you doing? There you go. What's that?